Outlaw Sports is brought to you by Molson Canadian, made from Canada, and Rocky Mountain Barbecue, Alberta barbecue cuisine at its best. Welcome to the show. Mike Lonsborough, Ian Busby, and this is my favorite time of year, CFL playoffs. And what a weekend it was, with records and controversial decisions up in Edmonton. And really, Ian, I just think the whole thing with Eric Tillman is kind of crazy. I mean, first of all, I'm looking at this guy, and everyone's saying, oh, yeah, the Ricky Ray trade is the reason he got fired. Yes, it was a bad trade. It was disastrous. But my point on this thing is, you've got guys in Edmonton, and you see it around the league, more and more guys that are involved in decision-making that aren't football people. You got it here. Michael Petrie with the Stampeders. He's not a board member, but he has say into what's going on. The point is, I think Eric Tillman, I would hire him as my GM in a heartbeat. I'll tell you why. He's won Grey Cups. He's had a history of recruiting. He's had some questionable decisions that he's made, yes, like the roster and Ricky Ray, which will always come back to haunt him. But that was a brutal team last year that wasn't expected to do anything last year. And slowly but surely they've come back, and, well, they're in the playoffs again this year.
Well, Eric Tillman has done some good things, and hiring Kavis Reed was one of them up in Edmonton, but I wouldn't hire him as my GM for the philosophy that he has, that he wants to have 15 or 17 guys on his injured list to hide them and protect them and develop them. It's not the way to go about business, in my opinion. The biggest reason that he got fired in Edmonton at this point in time was that he doesn't even live in Edmonton. He's still living in Regina, and it almost looks like he's trying to lobby for other jobs in other cities. And some of the rumors that came out over the weekend when he gets fired is he traded Ricky Ray to Toronto, figuring he'll be in Toronto at some point as the GM there.
Oh, that's crazy. He might, but
he wants a quarterback for that franchise when he goes there. That's a far-fetched.
That's stretching it.
That's the grassy knoll type scenario.
Yeah.
But as a guy who's the face of your franchise, or a guy who has to come out and speak, I wouldn't want Eric Tillman to do that anymore. I think his image has been tarnished over this tenure and the way he left his last tenure. Obviously, he's kind of a punchline now.
Well, don't think that the Saskatchewan Roughriders weren't considering keeping him. I mean, it was that close. I mean, it was that close with those guys. I still think he's got a value in this league. I still think what he does with talent is something that, you know, you don't lose it. It's like Shiv. I mean, Shiv was a GM with controversy in Saskatchewan. Would I hire Roy as my GM? Absolutely not. And I like the guy. But player personnel, you can't beat it.
BC's doing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And but you think about that last year in Saskatchewan. He was under house arrest or something to that effect.
Yeah.
He wasn't around the day-to-day operations of the team. He was just going out finding talent, making moves. Brendan Tillman was the guy who was making all the day-to-day things. He would go over to Tillman's house to meet, then he would go back to the stadium and implement what he was doing. That worked well. They went to the Grey Cup that year, 2009. Now, they lost it on the crazy last field goal. He would have had another Grey Cup ring had it not been for that play. That was the best scenario because Tillman was in the background instead of the foreground, which he was in the background with the Edmonton Eskimos, but that's not what they want. It's a unique franchise. It's community owned. They want to have their people out front in the community being visible, and he wasn't visible.
You remember, this was the model for so many years in the CFL. The Stamps can say what they want. Oh, since Wally, blah, blah, blah. The Eskimos were the class of the league. I don't care what anybody says. They have been for a lot of years. Now, I think, when you get people that aren't football people making the important decisions, you are on a slippery slope.
You're talking about Len Rhodes, the president and CEO, who seems to have driven away a lot of good people in that front office. Dave Jamieson being one of them, a very highly respected media relations director for 16 years, and he left at the start of this year. He couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't take it. He didn't even have a job. He left. And then now he's the president of the Edmonton Rush, the lacrosse team, because the lacrosse team saw what he did.
Oh, he's excellent.
So many years with the Eskimos, brokering some local radio rights and that type of thing. He was great at that job, and he was highly respected among the sports.
Well, if you think the ownership with the Edmonton Rush is any different, I mean, you got another thing coming too. That guy's wacko.
Right.
So, I mean, lots of luck with Dave on that job.
But he knows, hire a good person and let him run the operation.
Yeah, if he lets him do that.
Len Rhodes is being the guy that's driving everybody away right now.